I'm sitting here with George Crowell, another one of our monetary reform folks who we always seem to find at this conference that are always interesting people to talk with. And so I thought that I'd introduce George from London, Ontario. Can you, just in your own words, George, tell us, why you think monetary reform is an important thing for anybody to be doing, and especially for yourself?
Yeah, well, the current monetary system we have is extremely destructive. Practically all the major social problems that we confront globally have their roots, at least in part, in our highly destructive money system. It's very important that we understand, when we understand monetary policy, we're talking about something that ordinary people just don't think about. It's outside their area of observation. Yeah. When you ask people, where does money come from? Most people say that the government somehow creates it, or maybe it's based on gold in some way or something. Both of these things are false. The fact is that about 97% of the money that's in circulation, that's absolutely essential for us to carry on economic transactions in our society, has been created out of nothing by the private banks in their process of making loans. Whenever a bank makes a loan, it does not use the money of depositors unless it's selling them a guaranteed investment certificate, but it creates new money. The banks are in the position where they can demand that we provide them with perfectly good, valuable collateral, and they can provide us money that they have created out of nothing. Right. Then they charge interest, charge us interest, and if we are unable to pay the principal and the interest, then they can take our collateral away from us. Right. But the fact is, they've created an impossible condition for us to fulfill, that is, for us together, all together, to fulfill. When they create the money for these loans, they only create the money for the principal. They don't create the money for the interest that they require to be paid. Where's that to come from? It needs, people need to do ultimately more borrowing at more interest in order to get that money.
And keep chasing it, right?
So we have a situation where people are, they put us in a rat race. We're competing with each other. It undermines community.
That's also true, isn't it, even for the government? That is.
Well, the fact is that the government does borrow from the banks and other private money letters at interest, but it doesn't need to.
Okay.
Yeah, which we can come to. Let me just say a little more about how destructive this system is. It sets us inevitably into competition with each other. It causes inflation because businesses have to raise their prices in order to pay, in order to cover the interest expense along with their expenses for labor and materials. Right. The workers, then with their prices going up, have to pressure for higher wages. So there's constant inflationary pressure in this system, and then it also promotes unsustainable economic growth. With businesses, again, if they want to get enough money to pay the interest, they're under constant pressure to grow their businesses. Everybody knows that we live in a finite ecological system that cannot tolerate unlimited economic growth. Inevitably, some people default. They're not able to pay those loans. And as some start to default, then they affect others, and pretty soon there's a cascade of defaulting, and there's a recession that occurs. And this is inevitable. Business people I mean, economists talk about the normal business cycle. Well, it's normal with the money system that we have, but you know, with another money system, these things would not be necessary. And you know, another money system would be where governments wouldn't borrow from private banks and pay interest. They're perfectly capable of creating their own money out of nothing and using this money to provide either interest-free loans or simply to spend the money into existence. If additional money is needed, they can spend the money into existence. You know, there's a mind-blowing thing about the creation of money, and that is whoever gets to benefit from the first use of newly created money gets a free benefit. There is such thing as a free lunch, and who's getting it?
Right.
The banks get it.
Exactly.
Right, the banks get the free lunch. Who should be getting it? We should all be getting it. We should share in this free lunch. And it would be entirely possible to do that if we had governments creating their own money and lending and spending it into existence, especially for infrastructure projects where capital investments have to be made. And instead of paying for these with principal plus interest, which might amount to 2 or 3 times the original principal, we could pay for it just once, freeing up all sorts of money for other budgetary items.
I kind of have a saying, George, and I've said this to Pete a number of times, that we even pay 3 times for every bag of groceries. And that's my view. Okay. George, can I just ask you, like, with that view, how have you been working, you know, that view, you know, into either your own work or whatever work that you do, or politically? How your efforts have been carried on?
Okay, well, I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't discover this issue until 1994, which was 2 years before my retirement from teaching social ethics in a Department of Religious Studies, where I was dealing with a wide range of current social problems. And I should have been dealing with this as one of the most fundamental of all the social problems. So I began dealing with it in my courses. It took a lot of learning. But in '94, when I discovered it, Canada was in the process, under a Liberal government, of cutting some of our social programs, especially our highly valued medical system. I was especially motivated to deal with this issue at that time. Now, I've gone to, in 1995, the convention of the New Democratic Party, and some of us succeeded in getting through a resolution calling on the party to work toward getting the Bank of Canada used as it was during the Depression and World War II, and 30 years afterwards to provide adequate funding, abundant funding, to enable us to meet those responsibilities and to build up our highly enviable social programs.
So Canada had that.
We had a history, we have a history of having used our Bank of Canada very effectively in this way. And it's very unlikely we could have had our public medical system without this. But in the mid-'70s, under pressure from the banks behind the scenes, we started shifting away from using the Bank of Canada in this way and borrowing more and more from the private banks. The private banks had got into some difficulties, and one way of supporting them was to give them more business by allowing them to lend to the government.
So one reform that could happen in Canada is just to revert back to something that you had been doing for decades.
Exactly. And so when we work with politicians and with the public, we emphasize the creative history we had with a different monetary policy. and call for us to return to making use of it. Now, the Green Party just recently, at its convention in August of 2010, passed a resolution calling for a return to the use of the Bank of Canada for this purpose. And there are enormous creative possibilities for abundant funding to be available for social justice and environmental needs of all kinds if we had the kind of monetary policy that makes use of the money creation power for public benefit rather than for the private bankers.
Right. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Nice meeting you, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and good luck with you in your work too.
Thank you again.
Yeah.